this is common, is that people come to like, I didn't have a traumatic childhood. And yay, that's great. But I do want to just create a distinction between like big T trauma and little t trauma. So big T trauma is like really life-altering events like sexual abuse or witnessing a death or witnessing violence, things that really rock your stability. But little t trauma, which is a little bit more common or a lot more common, is just little reactions from people. Say you put your hand up in class and suggest an idea and you get laughed at. And if there's no one there to support you in the emotion that you're having, it gets locked in the body as a trauma. So the next time you go to put yourself out there, your body remembers and goes, hey, you might actually get laughed at, you might get ridiculed, so we don't do that anymore. So there's so many little things that have happened when we've received negative feedback that can lock in as traumas and prevent us from doing things. We also can talk about epigenetics in that trauma affects gene expression. So this is a little bit complicated, but if you think about like nature versus nurture, there's always an argument there. Of course, your environment and how you're growing up is going to affect how you like what beliefs come through. So how do I explain this? I had an experience with this actually, and I may share a story. So trauma can affect gene expression. So if there's a belief that's been in your ancestor line or your generational line a few parents back, you may not express that gene. You may not express that belief. You may not be consciously aware of it. But if something actually happens to you that's traumatic, it can like unlock, and that's why people get really like changed after trauma, is because it's unlocked different gene expression. And I had an experience here where in my past relationship, when I had stopped drinking and everything, my partner, he was still doing alcohol and drugs, and I was off it. And there was one night, this is a little bit personal, but there was one night where he had been on the cocaine, and he wanted to have sex, and I didn't say no. But because I had been so repelled by the drug use, I could taste it in his mouth, and I was just disgusted by the interaction. It was actually quite traumatic for me, and I ended up being like very like anxious and not at ease for a while after that. And I did a healing session with a healing practitioner, and we had gotten to the bottom of that, and it had unlocked a belief from an experience in another lifetime or family line that I have to suffer through sex to please men, right? That is not something that I have experienced at all this entire lifetime until that somewhat traumatic experience, and then it's come up and it's really rocked my system. So epigenetics talks about how we can, genes can turn off and turn on based on what we experience. So it's always nature and nurture. So emotional patterns, beliefs, and traumas can be passed down through generations. Now, in the theta healing modality, we actually learn different belief levels where things can store. So I talk about childhood, which are your core belief levels. But there's also your genetic belief levels or your ancestral beliefs. So people in like your parents, your grandparents, all of that. And then there's history beliefs. So that's past lives and collective consciousness, if you believe in that stuff. So there's different ways that beliefs can come into your system. And I think it's good to know that they're not all from your experiences. So you can release a little bit of the criticism and self-judgment around, why do I have these beliefs? Just knowing that they come from multiple different sources. This was a little bit on epigenetics, and I included this because it interests me, and I was getting excited. But a study actually was done on Holocaust survivors, excuse me, that found trauma affects future generations. So children of Holocaust survivors actually had altered levels of cortisol in their mind, so like more stress hormone. So they reacted differently to stress, even though they didn't directly experience the traumatic event. And I put this in like ancestral mathematics. If you think about how many people you need to create you go back 9 generations, you need 2,048 people. And that is a lot. That is a lot of beliefs and traumas and experiences that all sort of funnel into you. While they're not all being expressed, they can be sitting dormant.